Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge, and welcome to Eldridge and Company. Joan Wile has gone from singing in cabarets to being booked in jail. She's taken her creative performance skills to the streets in her opposition to the war in Iraq. She's the founder of Grandmothers Against the War, and she's done a wonderful job. Now tell us about Grandmothers Against the War.
Okay. This started a little over 2 years ago. I woke up in the middle of the night and I said, this is horrible what's going on. I have to do something. And that magic word grandmother popped into my head. I had a notion that if I had a group that had the word grandmothers, we might get some attention. And the first thing that happened is that I organized a rally at Eleanor Roosevelt Statue in Riverside Park, and about 50 people came. And then I thought, well, now what do I do? And I realized vigil. Vigil was the next step. But I couldn't get anybody to come along with me. Everybody thought it was a terrible idea. It was too cold, nobody'd come, we'd get chased away. But one person, my friend Judith Cardesano, said, yes, we can do this. So the two of us went to Fifth Avenue on a freezing January day and stood there for an hour in front of Rockefeller Center. And we had to keep running in to warm up our hands. But anyway, so that was the beginning. And now, 2 years later, there are about, 25, 30 people every week. We have never missed a vigil, no matter what the weather. We have about 4 or 5 veterans for peace that come to our vigils regularly. They're the only ones that don't come when it rains or snows or whatever. The women are always there.
I've come only once, and I always feel guilty every Wednesday because I really want to come, because I think the idea of a vigil is so great. It always. Did you remember when you were growing up the black sashes in South Africa?
No.
These are women in South Africa who opposed apartheid many years ago.
Really?
And they used to wear a black sash. They were called the black sashes. And they would stand on street corners in different places in South Africa, just stand there with their black sashes, and they became very symbolic of the whole thing. So it always fascinated me. I thought it was a great technique.
Well, there was a group of women in Brazil, was it? Do you know? Yeah, a lot of Brazilian children were
with the children, and they just stand there with pictures.
Yeah.
So what do people say when they see you?
Most people are very supportive. You know, on Fifth Avenue at Rockefeller Plaza, people from all over the world come by. So we have tons of foreign tourists, and they're very supportive because they hate this war. They hate what Bush is doing. So we had one Italian man come over and kiss each one of us. We have people who applaud and thumbs up and so on. Every once in a while we have a heckler, maybe one every 2 weeks or so. Last week, actually, we had 2. And they'll say something like, you're traitors and you're not supporting the troops. But that's rare. We once had a heckler that was so abusive that one of the vets grabbed him by the scruff of his neck and walked him all the way down to the end of the street and called the cops.
Well, when I was there were police there.
Well, that was that during the Republican convention? No. Was that the day Cindy Sheehan was there?
It was just an average day. Code Pink came.
Oh, well, no, they're usually not there. They were there every day during we vigiled every day during the Republican convention.
Do you have to get a permit for this?
No, you don't have to have a permit if you stay on the street side of the sidewalk and if you don't have any loud speaking equipment.
So most people who come are grandmothers or grandfathers?
Most are grandmothers, but we have some young people, we have some men.
Do the grandchildren ever come?
Occasionally. Mine came once or twice.
How old are yours?
Let's see. 10, 11, 12, 15, and a 19-year-old step-grandson.
That's incredible. So I said you came from court. Now, why were you in criminal court?
Well, On October 17, my group and about 5 other groups that were mainly composed of grandmothers formed a coalition and tried to enlist at the Times Square Recruiting Center, and we weren't permitted inside, so we sat down on the ground in front of the recruiting center, and we wouldn't move, and so we got arrested and taken to jail. Now, I'm sorry the cameras didn't catch us when we sat down, because that was a sight.
I was there.
You were there?
Yeah.
See all us old ladies with our artificial hips and knees
and
trying
people
to
with
get
walkers,
down.
and I think there's a wheelchair. Somebody was in a wheelchair.
Well, not among the arrestees, but one of them, Betty Brassel, uses a walker, and Marie Runyon, our oldest granny who got arrested, who's 90, is just about blind and has canes, but so we had a lot of trouble sitting down and even more trouble getting up. But the police were very sweet to us, I have to tell you, and they helped us a lot.
And they helped you get into the paddy wagon.
They did, yeah.
I remember seeing them, and I remember the person with the walker and having to put the walker back up, and then they took you to Midtown South, and then they booked you?
Well, I don't know if that's what's called Midtown South. It was West 54th Street.
Yeah, I think it's Midtown South.
Maybe North, I'm not sure.
Oh, maybe, I mean Midtown North,
I don't know they put us all in jail except for Marie Runyon, the 90-year-old blind woman, and Betty, who had the walker. They gave them a little bit better accommodations.
Did they actually fingerprint you? No. I don't think so, did they?
I don't think so, no. Anyway, they put us 2 to a cell. We were there for about 4 or 5 hours.
They took the handcuffs off.
They did take the handcuffs off. But, you know, jail is a very unpleasant place. I learned there's nothing to do. I mean, they take everything away from you. You have nothing to read, to look at, to drink, to eat, and there's a board to sit on and an open toilet, and that's it. So, well, we had to resort to actually talking to each other for 4 years.
4 hours.
But it was an interesting experience and certainly worth it. So today, we were in court as part of the process of trying to determine whether we're guilty of the offense we're accused of, which is disorderly conduct. And the judge continued. We have to go back on March 2nd, at which point he says he will render a decision.
Did you have to testify?
No, our wonderful lawyer Norman Siegel testified for us, and he was really eloquent and had a chance in court today to say that, you know, we were trying to end the war in Iraq and we were questioning the recruiting policies and so on. So our points got very well articulated.
Did you discovered when you started this, I would imagine, that there are other people around the country doing similar things?
Yes, well, we were inspired by a group called the Tucson, Arizona Raging Grannies. They did I think they did the first one that we all know about in July of 2005 in Tucson. They didn't go to jail, but I think
they sat down, they went to recruit?
They actually got into the recruiting center, but then I forget why, but they got arrested. They didn't go to jail, but we were very, very impressed because the story went all over the world about these women. So then we thought, well, we're in the media capital of the world here in New York, so let's do it here. Since we did our action, there have been a number of others. And a new group has formed in San Francisco called the Bay Area Grandmothers Against the War, and they have called for a national action of grandmothers on Valentine's Day to go and try to enlist in the military.
So are you going to do it again?
Yeah, probably. We're thinking what we should do.
How many I mean, there are a lot of people around the country doing, not trying to get arrested, but doing vigils and organizations of grandmothers and mothers.
Many. I just keep hearing about them more and more every day. They read about me or I read about them and they write me and they're just everywhere.
They're all internet connected, most of it?
Yes, but separate too. You know, if we could all really get together, it would be fabulous. But there are lots of groups that don't know each other and that we don't know. And lots of grandmother groups. There's a group in Mill Valley, California that I got to know about, with about 200 seniors who live in a senior type residence, and every Friday afternoon they go and sit with their wheelchairs and walkers and things in front of their residence, and they've been doing it for a couple of years also.
So interesting. Now tell me what the grandchildren are doing.
You know, not just mine, but I think some of the other grandmothers report the same thing. The grandchildren are pretty indifferent to what we're doing.
Yeah. Why is that, do you think?
Well, when I was well, you and I were kids at the same time.
Right.
We were kids during the Second World War.
Right.
Our fathers were overseas, or our uncles, so we had a very direct connection to that war, so we were concerned, weren't you? Even as a child.
Oh, yeah, you were always scared and nervous.
I followed the Fifth Army up the Italian coast, but maybe it's the computer games.
The Vietnam War. I mean, were you active against the Vietnam War?
No, I wasn't. That's because I had little kids. I had babies, they were born during that, and I was pushing my career, you know, as a singer. And I'm kind of ashamed of myself, but I just didn't really get into that.
Well, I was, you know, active against that war.
I'm not surprised.
Well, I know, but I'm not as active as really, you know, I didn't get arrested, but I went to a lot of the things, and we used to have, I mean, when kids refused to go into the Army, there were big gatherings around them when they would refuse. But I can't explain why these kids are not involved now.
I can't either.
A lot of people think it's because there's no draft.
Yes, that's
They're
part
not
of it.
threatened themselves.
That's part of it. I think it might be the computer games they've all got their heads buried in all the time. Maybe that kind of insulates them from what's real in the world. I don't know.
It's such a shame, and it's especially, what do they say to you, your grandchildren?
They don't. They pretty much ignore it. Although, I have a wonderful banner that is made from a sheet, and the three younger grandchildren did paint the sign, Grandmothers Against the War, and they enjoyed that, and they were quite excited when they saw that sign on television. But
what did they say when you went to jail?
Apparently one of my granddaughters, Emily, went to school the next day and told everybody, my grandma's in jail, or my grandma was in jail. So I think they're kind of excited a little bit about things when, you know, when they're very unusual, but no, they're...
What do your children say?
My children are, I think they're sort of halfway between thinking that's good, and there's Mom, you know, being her usual kooky self. They're supportive, but not actively so.
So it's really fascinating. It's just
they don't feel the threat the way I and you do somehow. Why is that?
Or just the outrage at it. I mean, the indecency, the immorality of it.
Yeah.
It's just incredible to me.
Well, my oldest grandson, who's 15, well, I should say my oldest grandchild, a 19-year-old boy, he and my 15-year-old, they're very anti-war, very anti-administration. My 15-year-old grandson has read all of Michael Moore's books and totally agrees with everything he says. So they have the right attitudes, but they're not out there.
I have an 8-year-old granddaughter who attacks Bush every time she gets an opportunity. So it's really great. You said you were busy with your career.
Yeah.
And I said that you sang in cabarets, but you've done much more than that. Tell me.
Oh, well, just
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Washington, D.C. area, mostly, not all the time. My family was in government, and I lived for quite a number of my early years with an uncle who was an economic advisor in the Roosevelt administration. very proud of him. And
so you grew up similar to me with good
oh, yeah?
Democrats, and
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go in Washington, but it was a family that believed in the New Deal and was Democrat. Yeah.
That was a rich time to be born, wasn't it? It was a good time. Then I started a career in my early 20s. I desperately wanted to be a jazz singer, and so I came to New York after college and went through the usual struggles, but eventually worked quite a bit until, well, actually in my late 50s is when my work started to fall off. I worked in recording studios, cabarets, nightclubs. I wrote songs and sang songs on movie soundtracks.
Tell me
television.
Some of them. What'd you do?
Well, the one that maybe people actually heard, this is kind of a shameful thing to say.
Stop it.
There was a movie called The Happy Hooker with Lynn Redgrave.
Oh, right, yeah.
I wrote the songs for that and
great.
sang them, yeah. Actually, that was a kind of cute movie and very innocent, really, particularly compared to what we have today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did jingles and stuff like that?
A lot of jingles.
Like what?
Well,
some famous ones that we know.
Two that, well, they're old now.
No, but I
there
mean
was one
age.
There was one for Cougar Cars, which actually the picture. I was just the voice. The picture was Farrah Fawcett right before she broke through as a major name, and I did one for Air France, and the girl in the picture on that one was Brigitte Bardot.
Well.
I'm sort of the the sexy voice detached from everything behind these very beautiful women, and Muriel Cigars, which Susan Anton did. So
did you write those or just sing them?
I did, yeah.
And you sang them too?
Yeah.
Can you wouldn't
No,
sing?
Susan Anton sang the one, but I wrote it.
So what was your favorite?
I hope you're not going to ask me to sing
Oh,
one
I
of
just wanted to hear a jingle,
right.
just a jingle.
All right, well, the Cougar Cars one. Oh my God, can I sing to
Yes,
you? The Cougar Cars song was, Cougar, it's like nobody else's car.
That's so great. So that's so that was a fun
Did
business,
it better
wasn't
than
it?
Oh, I had so much
Yeah.
fun. I miss it so much. But this is
Well, now
a
you've
good
got-
substitute.
Yeah, and you've got a group going, don't you? Or did you do you did a one-person show? Did you?
I've done
a lot of them.
I didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
I have, the thing I'm most proud about in my career is that I've written about 6 musicals, music, lyrics, and sometimes the book. And one of my shows is called 7 Ages of Woman, which details the life of a contemporary, urban, professional type woman from the cradle to the rocking chair in song. And my daughter, who's a wonderful singer, and I have performed that a number of times in theaters, and we did it on television once. And most recently, we did a performance of it with my 11-year-old granddaughter, Emily, who's also a terrific singer. So that's a lot of fun. I'm very proud of it.
That's great. That is really something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you still writing?
Oh, yes. I formed this group about a year and a half ago called the New York Granny Chicks. Now, I don't know if your audience is familiar with the Dixie Chicks. Probably.
Yeah, I think everybody is. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of a takeoff on that. But anyway, I write our material, which is all very anti-Bush and very anti-war, and some of it's funny and some of it's serious. And we've performed at rallies and fundraisers and peace meetings and in the theater a few times with a group called Theaters Against War. Are you familiar
No.
with them? That's called THAW, Theaters Against War. They have a show every month in various theaters in the city. The show's called Freedom Follies.
And how do they pick a theater, and how do we know about it?
Because they have about 140 theaters that are signed on with
Like
them.
what kind of theaters?
Well, the one we performed in was the Here, H-E-R-E Theater down, I
These
think,
are
in
off
Soho.
Broadway.
Off Broadway.
Yeah.
Malachi McCourt performed at one of the shows. He was terrific. You know, I don't think they publicize their performances well enough, and I'm going to talk to them about it, and I'll send you a schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seems like there's underneath the surface, there are all these groups that are simmering.
Yeah,
right?
Right.
Now, how do we bring them all up? I mean,
That's the question. That's what. Well, of course, our action at the recruiting center when we got arrested was a coalition of about 7 different groups, and we have a name. It's called the Granny Peace Brigade, and we are trying to extend it all over the state and then all over the country. And it's a coalition of granny groups that we hope will unite everybody.
Yeah. How many do you have in the state? Do you know?
Well, we've just started here in the city when we got arrested.
Right. So on the 14th of February, you think that it's going to be a larger group?
I think so, yeah. I have a feeling it's going to catch on, that a lot of people are going to do something at a recruiting center on Valentine's Day, and that I think will help cement these various groups together a little.
Do you ever have any contact with people who've come back from the war in Iraq?
Yes. I just got an email about 2 weeks ago from a young man in Brooklyn who said he'd been in Iraq and he wanted to join us. Were we still out there? Haven't seen him yet, but I referred him to the Veterans for Peace. There is a group of Iraq Veterans for Peace that have been organized by the vets. So if anybody's listening who's been in Iraq and wants to engage in some anti-war activity, I refer them to the New York City Veterans for Peace.
And do you have a web address?
Yeah, I have a website, grandmothersagainstthewar.org.
Great. And then Code Pink joins you sometimes, right?
Code Pink does. They're part of our arrest group, Granny Peace Brigade.
Are they younger women, or are they women of all ages?
They're women of all ages. We have about 3 or 4 Code Pink grannies that got arrested with us. But I think basically it's a younger woman's group, and they're terrific. They dream up the greatest schemes.
They do. They're really terrific.
And they get tremendous coverage.
Yeah. I'm on their mailing list, and I've bought all the shirts for my daughters. I can't fit into them, but I love them. This bright pink, and
we also. Well,
what?
Go ahead.
Go on.
Ahead.
No, you have shirts, T-shirts and stuff, and buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure I should talk about this, but Code Pink and my group, the Granny Peace Brigade, are engaged in a new action now, but it's political. I don't know whether I should.
That's so you can talk about it, of course.
We're a little bit upset with Hillary Clinton. Can we talk about that?
Of course.
Yeah. We're upset with Hillary Clinton, who has sat on the fence about the Iraq War. She first supported it, and even now, when most New Yorkers hate it and want it to end immediately, she keeps saying, no, we can't stop. No, we have to keep fighting. We're very unhappy with her stance about the war. So we have now organized into a group that follows her around. This has become nationwide. Code Pink has been very active in this. We find out where she's going to appear, and we go and we protest. And they're aware of it. It's been in the press.
And what about Chuck Schumer, who also has not opposed the war?
Well, we've protested him also, but we don't feel quite the same intense compulsion to do it because he's not going to run for president.
I see. So you're doing it not because she's a woman and not because of this, but she's a candidate for president.
Yes, and she's very, very famous, and what she says has a lot of influence.
It is amazing that we have 2 senators from New York, that have not taken a public stand against this war. I think it's just amazing.
Places, New York.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So you are nothing but encouraged about going on more and more.
Oh, of course. Now, the day that Bush, the day that Bush got reelected, we had a vigil, it just happened to fall on that day, and a lot of people came to the vigil, including me, horribly depressed, as I'm sure you were. And then we did our vigil, and by the end of the vigil we were all reinvigorated and elated, and something about just getting out there and doing something, no matter how bad things look or how depressed you feel about the world. It really not only maybe helps improve things, but it helps one's, you know, it's
just a release for you.
It's a release and
liberating for you to be able to publicly
it's a
let
very
you
good
know.
feeling.
Yeah. I would, you've written songs for especially for grandmothers, you've written songs against the war. Is it for the grandmothers against the war? Is it just generally for peace?
Generally, and against Bush, you'll hear.
Yeah, we're going to listen to some of those songs because I know that when I go to that one time I went, I was just elated with a feeling of participating, and I love it when I read your lyrics and I hear it. Thank you, Joan Wile, and thank you for coming, and thank you for going every Wednesday afternoon, 4 o'clock at Rockefeller.
4:30.
4:30, and if anybody wants to join, please join
Can
you.
I give the exact location?
Absolutely.
On 5th Avenue, the west side of 5th Avenue, between 49th and 50th, from 4:30 to 5:30, across from Saks.
Great.
Let's unite while we are still upright. Let's protest that parasite. Watch out, we've just begun to fight. We've just begun to fight.
Is there any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore? Please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 5th Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.